lesson is our first lesson of trigonometry. Okay, so trigonometry. What this is basically trigonometry. Okay, what this is basically a marriage of algebra and geometry together. That's what trigonometry is. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what this means. Before we do that, let's go ahead and start with our do now. So if there's no denominator or a number underneath 30, there's an imaginary 1. And when we are multiplying 30 degrees times pi over 180, when we're multiplying fractions, we do top, top, bottom, bottom. I don't know if you remember this from middle school, but let me teach it to you now. So 30 times pi is going to be 30 pi, and 1 times 180 is going to be 180, okay, on the bottom. So if I said to you, A, you simplify this, right? Take your calculator real quick. Alpha y equals, so that changes into a fraction. Put 30 on top, put 180 on the bottom, hit enter, and you're going to get 1 out of 6. So this is the same thing as 1 pi, because we're going to leave it in terms of pi. And we're going to put the 6 on the bottom. 1 times pi, or 1 times anything, is just itself. So pi over 6 is going to be our answer. Okay. You could have done the second question in like middle school, okay? Remember, this is a right triangle, okay? So the formula that should come to mind is going to be a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. I don't know if you remember this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to plug in some letters. So here's a leg, and this one, the one that's opposite, is called our hypotenuse, and this is always going to be the C. So this is our hypotenuse. Okay, so here. So we're going to go ahead. We can call either one of these A and B. Since this is right here, I'm going to call this A, and 8 is going to be B. So let's just go ahead and plug this baby in, right? So our A is 6, so I'm going to go 6 squared plus our B is 8. So I'm going to go 8 squared is equal to C squared, and I'm looking for what C is, aka X. So 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64 is equal to C squared. Again, do this on the calculator with me. So this is going to equal 100 is equal to C squared. And to figure out what C is, the opposite of squaring something is finding the square root. The square root of 100 is 10, so 10 is equal to C. So this side right here is equal to 10, okay? This side, hypotenuse. Good. So now we're going to come into this little circle. This is a circle, okay? From geometry, whether you liked it geometry or not, that's completely fine. But let's just kind of go ahead and start at the definition of the word unit, okay? So the word unit, like unit cost, is the cost of one. A unit circle is one that has a radius of 1, okay? Unit circle has a radius of 1. That means that this distance is 1, right? This distance is 1, this is 1, this is 1, and if I went like this is 1 as well. That's our radius, okay? So that distance right there is 1. Okay? So now, all we did is radius is 1 for a unit circle. All right, so now that's the first definition. For the point xy, which is this right here, right? This point, this random point that I just figured out right here, I can see that our x here, if this is 1, right, this is going to be less than 1, right? So since I'm not really sure what this number is, I'm going to just call it x, okay? And this right here is our y, right? That's our y, because this is our y-axis, so this is our height. So this is our y-axis, or y-coordinate, okay? And this here, this is a right triangle, okay? So this is our hypotenuse, right? So our hypotenuse is 1, okay? So that's our second definition right here. Good. So now we've gone through a first definition and our second definition. And we need to do that. It's important. So it says using the right triangle and the Pythagorean theorem. Remember, Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, right? So we're just going to go ahead and plug this in. So we have x squared. So here's our x squared plus our y is the same thing as here. So that's going to be our y squared is equal to, and our c, they actually gave it to us, right? Our c is our radius, which is 1. So it's going to equal 1 squared, which is the same thing as 1. So x squared plus y squared equals 1. Okay. So now let's kind of go into this a little bit more in detail. Okay. So it says if we examine angle theta in this unit circle, we can see that. Okay. So let's go through here and let's go into something that you may or may not remember, or you may or may not have been taught it. But I'm going to go through it anyway because it is something that we need to know. Okay. So this here is the measurement of this angle right here. Okay. Whatever angle measure that is. So there's something that you need to know called SOHCAHTOA. Okay. Not SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Okay. So what this stands for, let's go into what this means. Okay. So the S right here is called sine. Some people call it sin. So sine of this angle here, okay, sine of the angle is equal to, it's this O right here, O stands for opposite, the side that's opposite here, okay? So sine of theta is equal to opposite over the H stands for hypotenuse. See this H? That stands for hypotenuse. So hypotenuse. So let's go ahead and plug that in here, okay? So our opposite side here is y. Do you see that? Opposite this angle is y. So I'm going to put y on the top over, and our hypotenuse is 1, right? Okay. So y divided by 1. What is y divided by 1? Anything divided by 1 is itself. So y divided by 1 is y. So this means that sine of theta is our y. Boop, boop, boop. So this right here is equal to the sine of theta. Okay. C stands for cosine of theta, right? Which stands for, so let me go ahead and make some room over here. So cosine of theta is equal to, so ca, the A stands for the adjacent. Adjacent is next to, like if I'm standing next to you. And H is our hypotenuse. Okay, we already talked about what that means. So let's go back to this, right? Our adjacent side is right here. It's next to the angle. So it's x over, our hypotenuse is still 1. So I'm going to put x over 1, and x divided by 1 is x. So what this just taught us right now is x is the same thing as cosine of theta, and y is the same thing as sine of theta. Okay? Pause this video and take some notes. So this is what we just learned. X is cos, and y is sine. X is cos of theta, and y is sine of theta. I remember it like the alphabet, right? X comes before Y in the alphabet. C comes before S in the alphabet. Okay, so it's alphabetical. So therefore, we come up with this. Cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1, because remember Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is cos squared, which is cosine squared theta, plus sine squared theta is equal to 1 squared, and 1 squared is 1. Okay, all right. Next thing, these two formulas are straight in your reference table. So when you get the regions, they're going to give you those formulas. You just need to know how to apply it. Okay. So we did something like this. We used this formula in do now number 1. We said 30 degrees. We're going to convert it to radians. So you multiply it by this right here, pi over 180, right? So remember our answer was pi over 6. So you know how you measure angles, right? Is in degrees. So this is 30 degrees. And this is something called radians. So pi over 6 radians, okay? So 30 degrees is the same thing as pi over 6 radians. Rad. Rad. All right. And again, I know this is a lot, but we're going to get through this. So a reference angle is how far the angle is away from the x-axis. It's always positive and acute. We're going to touch that later. All right. So problem number 1, convert 30 degrees to radian measure, right? We just did that. 30 over 1, top, top, bottom, bottom. That's the same thing as 30 pi over 180, which is the same thing as pi over 6. Okay, simplified. Next one, problem 2. An angle theta is in standard position and its terminal side passes through the point -3, 4. So we're going to plot that point, -3, +4. We're going to plot it, okay? Oh, let's plot it better. Make this a little bit bigger. So -3, +4. All right. So the first thing we want to do is we want to draw, let's see, the best way that I could do this. All right. Alrighty then. Yeah, let's just leave it in black. Okay, so we're gonna connect this origin to that point to the best of my ability. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and label this right here and draw that in. Like, let's make our right triangle here. So we know that this distance here is 3. This one up here is 4. Okay, so now it says once we've plotted the point and we've drawn our triangle, it says sketch the angle on a coordinate grid and label what you're given. Draw a right angle triangle from the origin to the point along the x-axis. Done. Now it says use Pythagorean theorem, right? A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared to figure out what the hypotenuse is. Let's do that, okay? So here's our leg, here's our leg. So 3 squared plus 4 squared is equal to c squared. Pause the video. 3 squared, Christina Varghese. Okay, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. So pause the video and go ahead and see if you can find c. And after you did your work, you should have figured out that c is equal to 5, okay? Because this is 9 plus 16 is equal to c squared. So that's 25 equals c squared. Find the square root. Square root of 25 is 5, okay? Good. So we're done with step 2. Now, what we're doing next is we're going to go ahead and find the sine of this angle, okay? So we're going to find the sine of the angle. So let's do that. Find the exact value, right? Because that's what the question says. Find the exact value of the sine of theta. So here's our angle, okay? So sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So let's look at our angle. Let's look opposite it. So you see opposite it is the number 4. So I'm going to put 4 over. And our hypotenuse, we just found out, is c. So this number right here is 5. So 4 over 5, okay? Now the only thing that we need to do next is we need to look and see what the sign, this SIGN of this is, okay? So in looking at this right here, let me go ahead and show you something real quick, okay? All right. So going back to this real quick, this is quadrant 1, 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4, okay? I remember it as making the shape of the letter C, okay? So in quadrant 1, our signs are going to be positive, positive, right? Anything in here, the x is positive and the y is positive. So positive, comma, positive. In this quadrant right here, right, our x is negative and our y is positive. So it's negative, comma, positive. In this quadrant right here, x is negative and y is negative. So it's going to be negative, comma, negative. And in this quadrant right here, x is positive and y is negative. Y is negative, okay? So why am I showing you this? Professor Varghese, what are you doing? Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm reminding you that our first number is our cos, our second number is our sine, right? So that means that in this quadrant right here, cos, second number is sine, they're asking us to find the sine, right? And our sine is going to be a positive number in this quadrant right here, which is where we were in this problem, right? In this problem, we were in quadrant 2. So in quadrant 2, our x is negative, but our y, our sine, is positive. So this answer is going to be a positive 4 over 5. Okay, done. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause, and I want you to do this check for understanding and show it to me in class, right? So just to help you out a little bit, let's go ahead and draw a right triangle. What is that? Let's draw a right triangle right here. You can probably draw it way better than me. Let's go ahead and say, okay, let me see if I can draw this better. So this one is a positive acute angle. So that means that I'm going to draw the angle more so like this. So here's our angle. This is positive acute, and they're giving us a couple of pieces of information, right? So cosine of x is equal to 3 over 5. Just to refresh your memory, so, ka, soa, okay? That's a C. So cosine, that's the one that we're using. So cosine is equal to A, adjacent, over H, hypotenuse. And they're telling you that your cosine is 3 over 5. So let's go ahead and label that, right? So here's our angle. This is our hypotenuse. We know that. This one right here is our OPP, our opposite. So by default, this has to be adjacent. So I'm going to label this, right? Our adjacent side, look at what it tells us. The adjacent side is 3. So I'm going to put a 3 right here. And our hypotenuse is 5. So our hypotenuse is 5. And what I'm asking you to do now is I'm asking you to find out what is the sine, right? So find this number right here and plug it into the sine formula. Sine of theta is equal to, right, opposite over hypotenuse. So we know the hypotenuse is already 5, okay? What I'm asking you to do is find out what this number is. All right. Best wishes. Go ahead and stop once you're done with this and show Varghese. Well, show me in person, and then do some delta math problems to make sure that you're good.